Strip clubs. Just saying the words probably brings a whole bunch of images to your mind, right? A lot of debates, a lot of stereotypes. But I want you to look past the neon glow for a minute, because behind all the moral arguments, there's an incredibly complex, multi-billion-dollar industry. So what's really going on?
The truth is, it's way more complicated than what you see in the movies. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to peel back the curtain, get past the stereotypes, and look at everything from corporate balance sheets to the actual daily lives of the dancers. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the image the industry wants us to see, because it's very carefully curated, it's often really polished, and it's designed to feel, well, totally mainstream and accessible.
Just listen to the language in this review of a club in Atlanta. It doesn't sound seedy or sketchy at all, does it? Dinner with some decent drinks. I mean, that sounds like a review you'd read for any other upscale restaurant. This is exactly what they're going for. The gentleman's club ideal. A legitimate, high-end place for a night out.
But, that polished image, it's really just the front door, because behind it, you're not just looking at a nightclub. You're looking at a massive corporate machine.
And that's really the key thing to grasp. While the public is over here debating the morality of it all, there are publicly traded companies treating this as a very serious and very profitable business sector.
Get a load of this number. Nearly $300 million. And look, that's not the entire industry. That's the revenue for just one of the big publicly traded companies in this space for a single year. We are not talking about a bunch of small-time bars here. This is a corporate empire.
So where is all that cash actually coming from? Well, the breakdown is pretty fascinating. The single biggest source of revenue isn't even the dancing, it's alcohol, at over $113 million. That's way more than service revenues, which is where the fees for dances get counted. It operates just like a complex hospitality business, because when you look at the books, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, so we've looked at the corporate balance sheet, which is all about making as much money as possible from things like food and drinks. But let's shift our focus to the people at the absolute center of this industry, the ones who are actually generating that service revenue, the dancers. What is the day-to-day reality of the work really like?
I think this quote is just perfect because it cuts right through all the stigma. I am an actress who acts on your lap. She's framing it as a performance, right? A persona she puts on for her job. It's not her entire identity, it's her work.
And that work comes with this really stark duality. On one hand, you've got the promise, financial independence, a flexible schedule. But on the other hand, you have the harsh reality of a gig economy model. I mean, it's a lot like driving for a rideshare app or delivering food. Dancers often have zero labor protections, they're in direct competition with everyone else on the floor, and they face this intense pressure just to make a living.
And here is the core contradiction of the whole labor model. Dancers are almost always classified as independent contractors. So that means no sick pay, no minimum wage, no protection from getting fired, and yet the clubs have immense control over them, imposing fines, using surveillance, setting really strict rules, just like a traditional employer would. It's all the responsibility of an employee with all the risk of a contractor.
Okay, so this brings us to what is probably the most difficult and fraught part of this whole conversation. The intense debates around regulation, the very real risks that workers can face, and the shadow of criminal exploitation.
So on one side, you have this voice of community opposition, which is really powerful and deeply felt. The argument is fundamentally a moral one, that these clubs are a blight on a city's character and they're inherently dangerous. And so the proposed solution is simple. Regulate them out of existence. Just shut them all down.
But then there's a completely different take on it. This academic perspective suggests that these regulations aren't always about safety. They argue that sometimes it's really about social values and gentrification. Pushing out businesses that don't fit a certain aesthetic, which of course disproportionately hurts the workers who rely on those jobs to survive.
Now, we need to be really precise with our language here, because the most serious risk we're talking about is human trafficking. The term gets thrown around a lot, but the legal definition is very specific. The key elements are force, fraud, or coercion. That is the bright shining line that separates consensual work from criminal exploitation, and it's an absolutely vital distinction to make.
And make no mistake, trafficking is a horrifying reality. This study of homeless youth found that a staggering 14% were victims. It just goes to show how this danger exists in the orbit of the adult entertainment world, preying on the most vulnerable people, even if it's distinct from the day-to-day work of most dancers.
So who is most at risk here? Well, the data is painfully clear.
Traffickers don't just prey on people at random. They exploit vulnerability. Poverty, homelessness, a history of abuse. These are the factors that create opportunities for predators to step in.
And one of the most powerful weapons they use is debt. A trafficker will lure a victim with all these false promises and then saddle them with an impossible debt, sometimes up to $40,000. They use that debt as a weapon of control, forcing their victims into prostitution to pay it off. It's an absolutely brutal trap.
So when you look at everything, the corporate machinery, the reality of the labor, and the shadow of criminal exploitation, it becomes obvious. Simple, black and white judgments about this industry just don't work. They just don't fit.
You've really got to hold all these different layers in your head at the same time. It's a sophisticated billion-dollar corporate business. It's a precarious gig economy job for thousands of workers. It's a battleground for huge moral and legal debates. And yes, it is a world where truly horrific criminal exploitation can and does happen. All of these things are true at once.
Which leaves us with a final, really difficult question. When you have an industry this complex, one that's sitting right at the intersection of big business, personal morality, and precarious labor, what's the right way forward? How do we create policies that actually protect the vulnerable from exploitation without at the same time punishing the people who are just trying to make a living? That's the real challenge that lies beyond the neon.